I'd like to welcome to the show Indra Rinzler. Indra, how are you today?
I'm really good. Happy to be here, Chris. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great to have you. So, before we get into it, what is Vedic astrology and how does it compare to modern astrology or mainstream astrology?
Well, that's we're into it now. Here, off and running. Vedic astrology is the astrology of India, and I like to say that the Western astrologers don't agree with Western, and Vedic don't agree with Vedic. So if Vedic and Western astrologers don't agree, that's just part of astrology. The planets are basically the same. I don't use the outer planets. I don't use the asteroids, but we use the inner planets, and we give the nodes, north and south node of the moon, called Rahu and Ketu. We give them more weight, but it's basically the same. The signs are the same. The meanings of the houses and the signs are basically the same. Nobody's going to agree completely on those anyways. The main difference is that the chart is cast slightly differently. In Western astrology, we're concerned with the relationship between the sun and the earth, which are the seasons. And so March 21st is Aries 0 every year. It's a fixed integration so that we have, that we can put down Cancer as whatever it is, June 15th to July 15th or whatever it is. I don't remember the exact dates. But in Vedic astrology, we have the earth, we have the sun, and then we have the sky behind the sun. And that keeps changing. And we take that into account. The solar system, the sun, the earth are in a 26,000 year cycle called the precession of the equinox. And the sky behind the sun is different every year. And in Vedic astrology, called sidereal time, star time, the it's changing each year. 72 years equals 1 degree. The two systems were the same about 400 AD, which is where I'm going to call it confusion started. I don't know if you can. It's not confusing, but it's the difference of the systems. And so the chart is cast 24 degrees different now backwards. And so if you think that you're a Leo, in Western, then most likely you're a Cancer to me, and that is the biggest difference, and the sometimes the most confusing part of it. And you might ask, which one's true? And the reality of it is that they're both true. And I like to say that the Chris that's at the office and the Chris that's with the kids and the Chris that's with the buddies and the Chris at the game and the Chris on vacation are not the same person. They're going to wear different clothes. They're going to act a little differently. And so the two charts have a different, pick up different parts of our life, different parts of our personality, different parts of us. And I find that the Vedic is really important because my focus is on spirituality, and it really seems to pinpoint the spiritual tests and the spiritual needs and the subtleties that are really important in to me, to help them to see what's going on in their life.
Thank you. So, how did you uncover Vedic astrology and what drew you to it?
Uncover it? What do you
Yes.
mean by uncover?
So, I'm going to assume that at one point in your life you didn't know what Vedic astrology was and that
Okay.
you learned it from either a book or in conversation or something to that
Okay.
effect.
So how did it start appearing in my life?
Hmm.
Well, I started with astrology in the early 70s, and then I studied it intensely for a number of years, and then I kind of got to a place I couldn't really go any further with it, and then I picked it up again 20 years later, and by then I was living in a long time living in a spiritual community dedicated to an Indian teacher, and then I heard about Vedic astrology. I studied it, reading it. I mean, I had a teacher or two, but I haven't really had a lot of teachers. The uncovering, the thing is that the uncovering is sort of an interesting word because it's been revealed to me more than more. I mean, I've studied it, and my approach, which is a little bit different, is that I tell people is that they say, "Well, I want to learn astrology. What should I do?" So I say you should read every book that you can find for 2 to 5 years, and then you learn all the rules, and then you throw them all out, and then you feel what the truth is for you, because every book contains truth, but I don't think any book contains 100% truth.
Right. Everyone has their own truth, and what resonates with one person doesn't resonate with someone else.
Absolutely. Recently, a friend of mine said, "Well, what do you think about the eclipses?" And I had the moon eclipses, and I don't really follow the moon eclipses. And I thought about it, and the fact is that I, like you, have moon in the first house. I'm a full moon baby, born right before the full moon in a fire sign, and I'm always sort of not eclipsing, but always sort of powered by it. And it's like, if you're drunk, the next drink is not going to make much difference, So,
Hmm.
so, so you're not touched by it anymore. So the thing is that I just don't feel it. But I then read somewhere somebody said that they were really affected that they don't have a strong moon and they're really affected by the eclipses. And sure, yeah, if you're very sensitive to it and not so, you know, feel at home with it, then it may shake you. So the fact is that to find the truth, you've got to kind of read enough people to find the in between, because the people who have strong eclipses, who are affected strongly by eclipses, just to pick on eclipses, not that that's particularly important, and the people who are so moony that it's like it's a non-event. You've got to find the truth between, because they're both true for themselves, but there may not, but that neither one may be the truth universally. Yes, it affects, but that doesn't mean you're going to feel it.
Right. So the community that is this the same community that was founded by Yogananda?
Well, it wasn't actually founded by Yogananda. It was founded by a man named Kriyananda. He was a direct disciple of Yogananda, but it was based on Yogananda's teachings. He was a direct disciple of Yogananda, and Yogananda was the master of the guru of the community. He was already had left his body by the time the community was founded.
Great. Yeah, I'm just finishing up autobiography of a
Autobiography of a
yogi.
yogi.
And I also thought it was very not coincidental, but very synchronous, if I'm saying that word correctly, that having this conversation is at the same time I'm getting to where he's talking about astrology, and also at the same time he's founding the ashram in India and the US. So I just
Well,
think it's very
let me give
interesting.
you another one. Is that the first Yogananda got an inward message? He was told he was going to, but he got an inward message that it was time to go to America. He was the first guru, first Indian master, first guru to not to visit the U.S. but to live in the U.S. And he landed in, where do you think?
I'm assuming Boston.
Starts with a B. Yep, Boston, 1920. And I forget the name of it, but it was a congress, a convention on spirituality, like international and all kinds of spirituality, that he got an invite to. And so 1920, not that far off, 104 years.
Hmm.
September, I think it was. So here you are, yeah, in Boston. So he lived in Boston for a while. He lived on the East Coast at first, and met lifelong disciples there at that particular time. So there is some roots, some samskars, some roots there, some past karma.
Yes, and also kind of tailing on the astrocartography and the Vedic astrology. How does that play into like the yugas? And for the audience, can you describe what a yuga
well, you're
is?
just jumping right into it. So the yugas are the cycles of time. The Greeks called it the great ages, the golden age, the silver age, the bronze age, and the iron age. In India, we call it Sat Yuga. That's the highest, the golden. Treta Yuga, second. Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. And Yogananda's guru Yukteswar was asked by Babaji, the deathless guru who was the beginning of the lineage, to write a book. And in that book, he said, and by the way, we're about to go into Dwapara. And everybody in India thinks we're still in Kali Yuga. He's the only one that said we're in Dwapara Yuga. And it's important because it's the time of the body-mind connection. I like to say that universal healthcare is not a Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is the densest age. Universal healthcare is not a Kali Yuga idea. The internet, atomic energy, quantum physics, how yoga has in the last 30 to 50 years exploded on the world. I mean, there's a yoga center. I'm in India now, and I went to visit a friend of mine, and his son is a teacher here. He's got 87 students here in his class this month from 43 different countries.
Wow. That's a lot.
87 students and 43 different countries. So there is yoga center in everywhere. Oh, in every country, there's a yoga center. That is not Kali Yuga, the densest age. That is Dwapara Yuga. And the importance of it to me is that well, in astrology, that in astrology and Kali Yuga, you are your sign. You're stuck. You're fixed. You can't change. You are limited. You can't go beyond. And in Dwapara Yuga, those ideas are make no sense because you're limitless. You can do whatever you want. You can be who you are. That you are you are God. You are one with God. You are a reflection of God. And so it's a completely different way. I like to say that he said that the Dwapara Yuga is 2,000 years long. We are 125 years in. If you ratio that over 9-month gestation, 2 weeks in, we don't even know we're pregnant yet. People say, well, if we're in Dwapara Yuga, why isn't it different? Well, it is different, but we don't even know we're pregnant yet here. So give it a chance, I mean, it already happened. I like to say so he said in 1894, Yukteswar said in 1894, we were going to be in Dwapara Yuga proper in 1900. So between 1900 and 1910, we had the first flight. We had the discovery of quantum physics. We had the theory of relativity, and we had Pavlov discovering conditioning, who was already was it a Nobel Prize winner or a Pulitzer Prize or something that he had won 2 years before he started working with the dog and conditioning. And so those were within the first decade of this particular 2,000-year era, 10 years, 1/200th. So what is that? A 0.5%. We had already had 4 major changes to our life. And so it's a way to look at life in a completely different way.
And then also in the 90s, which isn't too far off from there, it seemed like there was a big renaissance or uptick on the spirituality side as well between Yogananda's arrival in the United States, the Kabbalion being published publicly, and a bunch of other books. I think that was published by the Master Key Society, or there was a lot of other written texts that were published out there as well. I think there was also some archaeological discoveries around that same time as too, that kind of added to that connection.
Well, yes. So if you look at it from this framework, you can see that's why I believe what he said, not because he said it, but when you check the history, it does kind of line up. And that in my time, I like to say from 1970, when I first moved to California and found a natural food store and organic started being a thing, to now where natural and organic are misused, overused, and misused. It's a tremendous amount of changes, and I don't personally worry about the future because it isn't going to do me any good. First of all, and second of all, there's just the changes are happening, whether we allow them or not. Like we can allow them, whether we allow them or not. The changes are already happening, and the importance of it for me was to be able to understand and be supported in looking at astrology, for example, in a completely different light. These things that I was telling you, throw the rules out. All of the rules are from Kali Yuga. So I don't have any problem with, people say you're stuck and it's this and it means that and it means this. And I say, well, okay, fine. Thank you. And then I move on because I just don't really believe any of that. But not the limitation. That is not truth.
Right. So when you're looking at the planets and the charts, well, what are the different charts that you're looking at, and kind of how can you tell the entire picture based off those charts or those tools?
Well, the different charts, we basically are looking at the natal chart. I use a divisional chart. The Navamsha chart is one of the readings that I do, and it's a divisional chart. You divide the chart by 9. I can't really explain how they do it, but there's actually 60 divisional charts, and they're also in Western astrology, they're called harmonic charts, where they also divide. Of course, they don't do it the same way. Why would you expect them to do it the same way? They do it a little bit differently. But I look at that. They're all different modalities and tools. You talk about charts, but I think maybe what you're talking about. I use the Enneagram of Personality, which is not really astrology. I use it with astrology, but it is a completely different modality. It's based on 9. Enneagram means 9-sided figure. And there are 9 personality types, and I use that. It's like a chart. It's like an X-ray. These charts are X-rays to help us to get a picture of our life, of the personality, not of the soul, but of the personality. They're grounded in the physical plane reality, and each of the modalities and each of the tools tells us more. You break your arm. Maybe the doctor, maybe that's not a good example. The doctor's going to want a picture from here, but they may also want a picture from here, to give it a different perspective. And that's all we're doing, is getting some different perspectives with different modalities, with different input, in order to be able to perceive with more clarity, to reflect back to the native, the client, who they are, who they think they are, what is going on, in order for them to get insights.
Thank you. And I want to thank you again for running that natal chart for me. I think that would be a good kind of running through that would be a good example to kind of, you know, demonstrate, how it all kind of works together.
So is there a place you have a question you want me to start at, or should I just dig in, or?
You dig right in.
Okay, so what I do is I start with the Shadbal at the bottom right, is the strength of the planets. I should say that this is a Vedic astrology chart. I like to give people an introduction, which is how to read it. The first house is this one up here, the moon. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the first house. Always in this chart, the houses are fixed, and then the houses go counterclockwise. This is the second, third, fourth house. I call this 9 o'clock on a clock. The fifth house, the sixth house, 7, 8, 9, the 10th house here at 3 o'clock, 11, and 12. And the numbers here are not the house numbers. We want to make them the house numbers, but they're the signs. So for me, you're a Libra rising. Again, this is 24 degrees different than your Western chart. You're a Scorpio in Western. Well, no, you're 24. You're probably Scorpio there, but you're just like cuspy. You're just a degree or so in to Scorpio. But here you're right in this. You're 6 degrees in Libra here. So there's balance is important to you, and you have Moon in the first house. Okay, so I like to give people how to read the chart here a little bit, because it's a square chart, not a round chart. If people are Western astrologers, your planets are pretty strong planets, strong or high energy. Planets are neither good nor bad. They're strong, which means that they are a skill, that they are an ability. We can get arrogant. We can look down the nose as that you're not am and you're not. So that could be on the high, that you can get so strong with your skill that you can get arrogant about it. But basically, your Saturn is almost off the chart. So a lot of focus and discipline. Your Mars is really strong, so doing is easy for you. Your Jupiter and Venus are next, and those are really healthy numbers. Now they're starting to they're really a drop down from Saturn and Mars. So it may be more difficult. I like to use the analogy of, Michael Jordan was world class in basketball, but, was better than average in baseball and golf, but not really that world class. And so your Jupiter and Venus, while for most of us is really strong, when you get arrogant with your I'm focused and disciplined, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with me? Then your Jupiter and your Venus are strong, but then they look down. Then you got Sun and Moon, which are exactly the same, which is a little unusual, but it's a little bit of a step down, but not a problem. The only one that really is, you got your Mercury in red there. So interesting. You have a podcast, that the need to communicate, the ability to communicate, share your feelings, isn't strong, wasn't strong. You develop. I like to say we teach what we need to learn. And so, you have a podcast in order to be able to express yourself, because I would assume that is not, one of your greatest skills. Can you want to comment on that?
So public speaking typically isn't one of my best skills. I'm decent at communicating via, written, like emails, text messages, and, casual conversation in small groups. But when you put me into that larger audience,
Yeah.
is when I tend to not freeze, but stutter a lot.
Okay. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. So the next thing I like to look at here is the dignity here at the bottom in the middle. The dignity is the quality of the energy of the planet based on the sign that it's in. And yours are pretty good. Exalted sun. That's the best. Exalted. You've got enemy moon. Okay. We'll get back to that. Your Mars is in friend. Your Mercury is in friend. Your Jupiter is neutral, and neutrals are fine. Your Venus is exalted. And I can't see what's underneath there. let's see here. No, I can't trick it. I thought I could trick it to show it. I can't see what's underneath there. Oh, it's in its own sign. I can see it through there. Own sign. So you have incredible dignity. You go down to one neutral. You've got one enemy. It goes enemy, great enemy, debilitated. You don't have any of that. Your moon is in enemy, so it's slightly triggered. Okay. Triggered means that it's in a sign that it's a little uncomfortable in. So there's, like you talk about the public speaking. So there would be a side of moon that you don't like to show your emotions, and reserved, and you may be emotional with your friends and family, but again, publicly, that the moon is sensitive on the high side, emotional on the low side, and you're going to be, it'll be a subtlety that we may not notice. So do you want to comment on that?
That's pretty accurate.
Okay. So, and so you have this, as I was saying, you have this to you before, these are the Kendra houses, we call them in Vedic astrology. They're the angular houses. This is the first house, the fourth house, the seventh house, and the 10th house. They're the cardinal or angular houses, and signs, the sign numbers. And so this is very present. I talk about the ones that are on the outside here, these two here, and these two, and these two, and these two. When you have a lot of planets in those houses, you tend to be dreamy. You tend to be the artist. You tend to be sensitive, intuitive. You're, what you see is what you get. You're all up front. Even though we talked about the moon being slightly hidden and the Mercury being slightly hidden, believe me, that's nothing compared with. Yesterday, I had a client with, I think, 2 enemies and 2 great enemies, and 3 retrogrades. Okay, you've got 2 retrogrades. We'll get to that in a minute. But this is an incredibly present chart. Moon in the first house. Your personality has enthusiasm. Again, you don't look like that, but underneath there's a joy and a. I have this too. I have Moon in the first house. It's a presentness with perhaps intuition and perhaps sensitivity, but it's a enthusiasm about life and about yourself. So then you have Mercury and Sun conjunct here in the 7th house, which is the 7th house of relationships. And here you have, so planets conjunct go up together and go down together. And so you have Mercury conjunct Sun. So Mercury is retrograde. Retrograde means that it appears to be moving backward. And it's a little bit like when the power goes off. It's a retrograde time. Everybody's heard about Mercury retrograde. You were born in Mercury retrograde, and so Mercury retrograde would actually feel a little bit more comfortable to you because it's your natal time, and so your communication, I'm going to call it a little backward, and I don't, it's not a judgmental term, but it's just sort of a, you may not, you may pre-think a lot of what you say and not say it. You may know what you feel, but to get you to say it may take. It's not going to be the first thing. Like that moon wants to blurt out everything, but the sun and the Mercury doesn't. The Mercury wants to kind of bide its time, and it's conjunct Sun. So on the high side, when you communicate, then you feel self-esteem. And when you're not communicating, then you have low self-esteem. And so what I was going to say before about your low Mercury is that it's connected to your self-esteem. And so when you're around people that you feel comfortable with, then the communication, even though, in that retrograde form, you're going to do your own style, but it's going to come out. But when in public speaking, when you're feeling, wanting to be introverted and wanting to hide and not being seen, then that communication is going to be difficult. When you're not feeling secure in your own self, then that communication is going to be difficult. And it's Aries. So interesting enough, the Aries being a fire sign. So it can get a bite to it, even though, and the sun is exalted. So the sun is really strong in itself. but it takes on the energy of the planets that they're with. And so when there's you can be strong on yourself, but when you get into that communication mode with other people, then it can be difficult because then the sun feels aspected by that Mercury energy.
That makes a lot of sense. As you can tell right now, I'm usually very slow with how I speak because I'm trying to choose my words carefully. And sometimes it takes, a little bit of a pause to formulate what I'm going to say before I say it.
Right, and I want to make sure that people understand there's no right or wrong. This is just explaining the personality, and that is perfect for you. It may not be perfect for me. I'm more of the I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm thinking until I say it. So I don't have that pregnant pause. Maybe I should, but I don't. But so that's this, and then you have everybody else is a singleton except over here you've also got, it's interesting, your two retrogrades are both with another planet. It doesn't have anything meaning on its own, but it's just kind of interesting the way that works. So Saturn is focus and discipline. It's retrograde. It's really strong, and it's in its own sign in Capricorn. It's in the fourth house. The fourth house is the groundedness in your own being, and so Saturn is focus and discipline. So when you're focused and disciplined, you're grounded. But it's conjunct that Rahu. Rahu is the north node of the moon. It's the head without the body. I gotta be me. I gotta express myself. I use the symbol of Robin Hood, stealing from the rich, giving to the poor. I've got to be me. I'm the rebel. Your Saturn and your Saturn is focus and discipline, and that's very centered. And your Rahu is I got to be me. I got to express myself. And so those are two kind of diverse energies that have to harmonize. Again, on the high side, you're focus and discipline, and I'm me. On the low side, I feel fear from Saturn, and I hold my tiger back, and then I'm ungrounded. When I'm able to be me, and when I'm focused and disciplined, then I'm being me. And when I'm not being me, then I feel fear, and then I hold my tiger back. So, any you relate to that?
Yes, definitely on the creativity side of trying to, one of the other reasons for the podcast, trying to express myself creatively. I can't draw worth, beyond usual stick figures. So drawing for me is out the window. When I try to
Well, this isn't
write,
the fifth house is creativity. This is your groundedness in your being, your ability to open your heart, your ability to be able to be present, your
yes,
ability to be able to be seen. That that we need to get grounded. If we don't get grounded, then we're ungrounded. We're not very focused. This is your ability to focus on yourself. It's not your creativity. We'll get to that
okay.
in a minute. Okay, so
So,
this is your when you're focus and discipline. You have focus and discipline in your grounded house. So you either when you're focused and disciplined, then you can be you, be authentic you, and when you're not focused, then you're ungrounded, and then you hold your tiger back, and you're not able to be you.
yes,
However,
that does
however,
resonate.
Okay. However, that happens either by hiding yourself or by, taking on a unauthentic you.
That makes a lot of sense. And there was times where when I went to college, it was wanting to, be a new me, basically.
Uh huh.
Instead of reverting back to the authentic me, creating a new self, if you will.
Yeah. A cool self that the girls will love, right?
Exactly,
And the
exactly.
girl and the girls will love you as you are. That
Hmm.
we may have to spend a month to 50 years to figure that out. So, so Mars is in your house of creativity, the fifth house. straightforward. Your Mars is very strong. And so you're creative by doing. When you hold yourself back, then you aren't creative. You have to do to be creative. It's in Aquarius. So Aquarius is a fixed sign. It's air. And so there may be some ungrounding. Mars is friend in Aquarius, but Aquarius for creativity, I mean, it can be intellectual, but the actual drawing, doing, there can be some rigidity there. I think you're already being too hard on yourself. Okay, that's that fixed nature of your creativity. You feel me there?
Yep.
Okay, you're being a little too hard on yourself. I think you need to be creative and not judge it immediately.
Makes a lot of sense.
Venus is in the sixth house. Interesting. I had this yesterday in Pisces. Venus is exalted in Pisces, so that's really beautiful. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, so it's expansive. The sixth house is physical plane difficulties. I don't personally think that that's a particularly good place, an easy place for Venus. It's physical plane difficulties. It's trying to get your jacket out of the dry cleaner and they're closed. Physical plane difficulties. Your favorite bread isn't on the grocery shelf. Physical plane difficulties to ocean pollution, peace in Lebanon, and nuclear armament. All of those physical plane problems, and you bring Venus to it. Integrity on the high side, judgments on the low side. I think this is a particularly difficult place for Venus. But I give the example that John Lennon had Venus in the sixth house, and I believe that his Imagine song is, I call it the highest expression of Venus in the sixth house. Imagine a world where there's love and peace. That's how you can exist with Venus in the sixth house. That you have to be in your integrity, and you can't let the perception that the world is screwed affect you, because the
Hmm.
world is just doing what the world needs. Again, we're already decided we're in Drapara Yuga. Things are there's a change a coming, and I think we can feel that now. There's a change a coming. And so the integrity is that I'm going to be in integrity to the world, and I don't need the rest of the world to be integrity to me. I need to be integrity to the rest of the world, and then you can live in that exalted Venus there in Pisces.
Yeah, that also makes a lot of sense. The other thing I was reading up on, I think there was the monks that come over from India or somewhere in Asia that will spend like a week in an impoverished neighborhood that has a lot of high crime, and kind
uh,
of you kind of have that focused, approach, and it will actually lower the crime rate by a significant amount during the duration that they're there, and then they'll disappear. So it's one where my understanding
that's
is,
bringing integrity. That's
yep.
bringing integrity to world problems, and so
Hmm.
it's I consider it a difficult position because it's really hard to bring integrity to the world problems. But it is your path, and it is something that you can teach people. You don't want to hide from it. And again, I go back and somebody told me that Yoko Ono wrote the song, and I said, well, it doesn't really matter. He sung the song wherever he got it. It doesn't matter that if the words weren't his, it doesn't really change anything. It's
Isn't this saying, be the change you want to see in the world?
yeah, be the change you want to see in the world. That's it. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Then you're in integrity, and you have to bring integrity to the world. But there isn't integrity in the world. There is when you bring it. That is, and it's a very high vibration with Pisces there being exalted. It's a very high expression of it. And will people understand? No, people don't need to understand. You need to understand. You need to live that, and you not need to get into that. You're talking about college, that 18-year-old idea that I need to be somebody else. You know, That's you're fine as you are. You have an incredible amount of power. The fact that other people don't see it or that you hold it back is your own story, and that isn't about other people. So let's see, Jupiter in the ninth house of what you're passionate about. That's beautiful. You expand with your passions. It's whatever I call it, whatever floats your boat, whether it's kayaking, mountain climbing, or crocheting. It doesn't matter. It's called the ninth house, the house of spirituality, but it doesn't have to be spirituality. It's whatever floats your boat. For some people, nature is spirituality. So whatever floats your boat, you've got Jupiter there. It's neutral there in Gemini, but that's fine. Gemini is the twins. And so, perhaps you have a couple of different ways of expanding with that ninth house spirituality. You have perhaps a worldly way you do it, and you have a soul, an interior way that it expresses your soul way of doing it. And last but not least, you have this K2 here alone in the 10th house in Cancer. Let's see. K2 is the south node of the moon. It's the body without the head. It's on the high side, it's wisdom. On the low side, it's no momentum. And it's the 10th house of career. It's how people see you. And it's that you want to be seen for your wisdom. It's a very high position. It's Cancer, so it's the cardinal water sign, and so it has a flowiness to it. I think that flowiness doesn't mean that you want to flow in and out of it. I think it means more that that you bring more into that. Moon comes in there. The ruler of Cancer is Moon. And so that wisdom that you have from K2 needs to have intuition. It needs to have heart, and it needs to not worry about being seen. Sometimes the planets in the 10th house can feel like you're living in a glass bathroom, that everybody can see into you. And so you hide behind your wisdom. You don't want to be seen for your wisdom. And you might be a podcaster who would not do video and would do audio, but you do video, so that's okay.
Mhm.
But maybe 10 years ago you wouldn't have. But the idea here is that that the wisdom is that people see you for the wisdom. And these are some really beautiful positions here. K2, the Jupiter here, expansion with your passions, and the doing with Mars right into your creativity. You need to do that more. And your Venus, which is a difficult position there in the sixth house, is really a very high expression. Moon in the first. These are really high quality expressions. You're being asked to really live at a very high vibration. And that, to top it off, not only with a 191 Saturn, but you've been in Saturn for since 2011. This is the Mahadasha period. It's the great period of Saturn. The teaching is that each of the planets has in a 120-year cycle, each of the planets has a set amount of time where it's the most important in your life. And you were born in 1990, which means that you were 5 years in Rahu. So you were really a rebellious self as a 5-year up to 5-year old, probably too much to handle, even though you seem very unassuming now. You were more rambunctious and more rebellious there up to 5. And then you went into Jupiter. Jupiter is in your house of passion. And so you were expansive. And then at 21, you supposedly finished college, and you go into Saturn, inward into the cave, and everybody is jumping off and going into their careers and expanding and jumping off, and you're going into that cave. You're going into, who am I? What am I doing here? Being introverted, which you already seem a little introverted, but you're going even more introverted into I need to find my truth. That I can't really know what I'm going to do until I find my truth, and that's a 19-year cycle of which you've got 4 more years. That's October 19th, 2030. 4 or 5 more years, 5 more years of Saturn. So you want to share about that?
Definitely accurate. It seemed like it wasn't 2011 exactly, but it was a couple of years after that is when I started having some. That's there were a lot of. It felt like I was being pulled towards something or drawn to something, if you will, on the spirituality side. It started with some like types of feelings, like
Uh
feel like
huh.
kind of ramping up to cases which I haven't had since I was like in elementary school. Being able to walk into a room and feel the energy of like a fight just happened or a birthday just happened or happy feelings, sad feelings, things like that. It was also a time where some of the other kind of clear senses kind of started not wasn't steady, but it was like a pop up here, a pop up there, hearing things that weren't there, feeling things that weren't there, seeing out the corner of your eye something that wasn't physically there, but you could feel it and sense it and see it out of the corner of your eye. So things like that started popping up here and there, right at the kind of a little bit after 2011. So it forced like kind of that, like you said, that inward reflection, and it's
Uh huh.
been there pretty good. Then 2017 is when it really kicked into high gear of looking within, who am I, and all of those kind of more inward questions.
Yeah, Saturn won't leave you alone. It's not a, for the listeners, it's not a, like a Saturday morning feeling. It's a 24/7. It won't leave you alone. You need to do that work. Saturn won't let you do anything but doing that work, and for your higher self, and
Mhm.
you have to make friends with Saturn. You can't fight that energy. You have to go with the flow. My client yesterday also she was about 8 years into Saturn, and she said her life, married 20 plus years, and her life is completely changed. She's a completely different person than when she started Saturn in her and trying to make sense of it. And the idea is the sense of it is you're in that period. You can't, there's no argument, there's only Saturn's way. And it seems like you have that strong Saturn, you have a strong enough nature that it wasn't it hasn't been a dislocation that it is for a lot of people, but it's more of an affirmation of your work and who you are. So congratulations on that. It's giving you a depth early in life for you to be able to then you go into your Mercury, which is interesting. You go from your strongest planet to your weakest planet, so that the point of Mercury is to express the lessons you've learned in Saturn.
That's interesting. It also kind of follows the law of polarity of, if the pendulum swings to the left, it's going to swing equal distance to the right. So if you're going from your strongest to the weakest, it also makes sense that's happening, coinciding with not just applying the lessons you've learned, but also expressing the lessons you've learned.
The idea is to communicate them.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go back. I didn't. I think I forgot to ask you, but that K2 in the 10th house. Do you? How does that wisdom and being seen for that wisdom? You want? Is there anything you can communicate about that?
This kind of, I've been told that I come off more intelligent or have good ideas when, to me, it seems like common sense. So I personally don't feel like I'm, high wisdom or anything like that. To me, it just feels like common sense that I'm, 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's A plus B equals C. That's how it comes to me. But outwardly, from other people, I have had those comments of, "You're pretty wise. You seem, you know, wiser than how old I am."
Yeah, well, you know, a 1.91 Saturn and a K2 in the 10th house is you know, there's a lot of wisdom there. There's a lot of maturity. Sometimes we spend our lives catching up to that maturity, you know, feeling worthy of it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Feeling it's there, but then we reject it, and then we have to come back to it and realize that that's a gift. It's not a curse. It's a gift.
Hmm.
It's a blessing.
Cool. It's very interesting stuff.
So you have any questions about any of this? Should we stop sharing the screen?
Oh, we can stop sharing. Thank you, Robert. And then you mentioned that you're in India right now. And reading your bio, it
Yes.
looks like you travel to India, 4 to 6 months a year, and during the winter in the U.S., and then travel back. Where did your travels take you, and kind of what spiritual lessons did you learn from those travels?
Well, I started traveling in '99. I had I was separating from my first wife. The kids were grown, and if you'd have asked me 6 months before, what do you want to do? I said I would love to go to Kauai, and then I want to go to India. And so I ended up. I learned the Enneagram, and I immediately saw that there was a connection to astrology. And I attracted to me a teacher who had a system, and he was in Kauai. And so I connected with him, and I said, I heard you do this. And he said, I do. I said, I want to come visit you. He said, okay. So all of a sudden I had the plan that I had the desire, but I
Hmm.
didn't feel worthy of. I didn't feel that I should do it. It was waste of money or da, 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 whatever the reasons we pick. And then
Hmm.
boom, you know, it gets slapped on me. You're going. So I went to Kauai for 2 weeks, and then I went to India for 6 months. That trip, the first long time I was in India. And at the end of the trip, I met a man in southern India who was a trader. You know, he imported goods, which I had already had a retail store. So for 12 years, I started selling his stuff for the first year, and then I started buying my own stuff, and I did that for 12 years. And in the 12 years, I was able to, I've been to 56 countries and was able to, I bought in 22 different countries. I was able to go wherever there were, uh, third world markets that made handcrafted items. I would go there and bring interesting stuff back to the U.S. to sell. And the first year, I spent a lot of time in Rishikesh. I went to Rishikesh. I had friends that were coming here. And when I heard the word, I just felt I wanted to go there, because when I came in '86, we didn't go to Rishikesh, but then they started going to Rishikesh. And so my friends dropped me in Rishikesh, which is where I am, where the Beatles were. And I stopped doing the buying in 2012, and because it was time to start doing the astrology again and sharing. It was the beginning of, I was by 12, I was 6 years into Saturn. Do you notice 6 years into Saturn? You
Hmm.
know, does it ring a bell?
No,
You
no
know,
theme whatsoever there.
so so it started being, you know, it was like this. I had to go for it. So I spent a couple of years studying, and then I started doing professionally. I started doing this. Then I just started mostly coming back to India. I met my wife here in 2006. We had some wonderful times in India and doing some traveling together. She's in the U.S. She can't. She's not well enough. She's well enough to be, but not to come to India. And so we have 8 months together in California, and then she says taking my motorhome and going south. So I have two choices. I can either stay home alone and freeze, or I can travel somewhere. So I come back to India, which is like home to me here, and happy to be here for the 4 months. I can do readings here and do them online, and I've done a lot of writing here, coming up to Mercury.
Hmm.
The first book looks like it's happening. I found I went through a kind of, I'm going to call it hellacious, but really a learning time here, this year 24, that it was only of trying to, I was a publisher for 10 years, so I knew about it, but I really had to learn some lessons. And the way that I like to say it is that, whenever I had any ego attached, Saturn says, no, no. And so I just recently ended up finding a young woman who I believe can really help me to, together we can collaborate to bring this first book forward. And I got my first editing from her 2 days ago. So it's starting to believe like it's a reality, and it's something that most of this was written um, in 18 and 19, so 5 or 6 years ago here in India, in the room next door where I used to stay, and now I'm in the bigger room next door, and so it's coming a full circle. The thing is that I've learned in Saturn here these last years that why has completely disappeared. Why does not really matter. And why was the year difficult? Why is the book difficult? Why did it have difficulties and easy at the same time? I don't know, and I don't really care.
Hmm.
Does it have to come out? No, it doesn't have to, because I've already written it. That was my goal. But I'd like to have it come out, and I'd like to be able to share with it. I look forward to the day that I can share with people on the podcasts and share it with the world, because just to, as a low Mercury, just to be able to have expressed,
Hmm.
because it's not the message, which I think is strong, but it's the ability to express that I think is the growth. That's the purpose. You understand?
Yes, resonates a lot.
So, so I'm starting to wear green because that's Mercury's color, and I want to bring Mercury out. Mercury and Saturn are not particularly strong for me; they're conjunct and not particularly strong. But so it's and you could say, well, why? But oh, what a waste, Indra. No, I don't. It doesn't. It's before the last breath. It doesn't really matter. I had to wait to this particular time. Is that a problem? No. It's not a problem for me. And if the mind thinks it's a problem, I don't listen to that. I don't really care.
It's funny, imagine green being the color of Mercury. My entire room, ceiling to floor is green.
Well, that's good. Is that you or your wife? You're married, right?
So it was both me and my wife. My wife helped narrow down the choices, but I
Okay.
had the color family selected.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that was very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I like this.
She
When
gets to
I was
make the
doing
executive decisions.
I like I like to say when I was in retail and we are selling women's clothes, that to men there's only 8 colors. So you pick green and she picks shade. Okay, so that's good. That's a good way to go. So
Hmm.
yeah, so this is my time, and the black that you're wearing is more the Saturn color. So you've got them both there, helping you. You got your that strength and weakness right there. You're
Hmm.
living that duality all the time. Not just it's not just a coincidence. It's larger
Yes,
than that.
the need for balance.
Need for balance. Yeah, that balance helps you to be grounded in yourself. That balance, first house Libra, and the balance of the Saturn in the fourth house. That balance of that grounding there helps you to find balance. And so it's when you look at it, it's also obvious. I mean, it's like we're the last to know. It's like when we get it, we think, oh my God, but like we're the last to know. It's already going on.
So you mentioned you've been writing your book in India. Is is that because when you look at, like, was it location astrology, that you land on certain or close to certain ley lines based off your natal chart that works better for Mercury in that particular part of the world, or how does that kind of play
Well,
into to things?
It happened because it happens. There was no plan. It just is that it just comes up. It's not so much Mercury here; it's more Sun. That
Okay.
in I was born in New York, and I have a seventh house Sun like you, and here it's the 180 degrees difference. So now that Sun comes into the first house here. So rather than be around others, now it self expresses.
Okay. That makes sense. All right. Just kind of closing out, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone going through their own awakening experience?
One piece of advice: going through their own awakening experience. Well, I like to tell people to love themselves, but the piece of advice is that I had a client the other day say, I forget what I said to her, but she said, "Oh, yeah, that happened yesterday. I got it." And about 10 minutes later, I said to her, "You know what, dear? You don't got it yet. It's not done. That these lessons are not done. That they're not done. That they go on every level of existence, astral world, higher astral realms. We're still learning the same lessons. This I got it. I had a teacher here in India that, which I thought this was really valuable, that he talked about that the people's awakening experience. We hear the teachers now, the young teachers saying, I'm awake," but that's a pre-awakening experience. There's a famous Indian teacher, Ramana Maharshi, who had an awakening experience, a near-death experience as a 16-year-old. And he was probably born an enlightened master. Understand here. This was not, this is for show, that we have a story to tell. After his awakening experiences, he spent 19 years meditating in a cave. And so the awakening experience, the pre-awakening experience, the awakening experience needs 10 to 20 years of grounding in order to be more awakening. It's really a pre-awakening experience. And when they say I'm awake, it's mostly from ego. So for the awakening people, that would be my advice.
And lastly, do you have any parting words for the audience, and where can people find you?
Parting words are love yourself and love everything about your life. People can find me I have a website, IndraRinzler.com. I like to give people two free offers. I will send you your chart. It's not a reading like I did for you, but I will send you your chart. Email me, IndraRinzler@gmail.com. I need your birth date, time, and place, and I will send you your chart. And we didn't talk about the Enneagram particularly, but I'll send you a simple test so you can find your Enneagram number if you email me at indrarinzler.com at gmail.com.
Thank you for taking the time today, Indra.
You're very welcome.
Have a good one.